and I'm here with Howard and Helen Tompkins, and also with me is Peggy Clay. So Howard, could you tell me when and where you were born?
July 29th, 1942 in Clayton,
Okay.
Mexico.
And could you tell me a bit about your family? How did they get here?
Well, my dad came from Nevada, Missouri in December of 1908. And my mother's family all lived in the vicinity for years and years. They grew up here. And they lived over at Rosebud for a lot of years.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about all I can think of.
What did they do?
They were ranchers.
Okay. And Helen, when and where were you born?
I was born in 1948, March the 18th, at Tularosa, New Mexico.
Okay.
My mother's family homesteaded here in 1890 something, 3 or 4. And they came in covered wagon from Illinois.
Wow.
And my grandmother was 5 years old at that time, so they've been here a long time.
Mm-hmm.
My mother's one of 14 kids, so they had big families.
Mm-hmm. And what did your parents do?
My parents lived at Tularosa, and my dad's a house mover.
Okay.
And I met Howard here. I brought him a load of hay one day.
Okay. We'll get to that story. But we're going to stay in the past a little
Okay.
bit more.
Good.
So Howard, could you tell me what it was like growing up? What did you do on the ranch that your parents had?
Oh, growing up, we just played around. We did whatever we was told if they were looking at us, and they made us do it.
So what did they make you do? Could you be more
Oh.
specific?
We'd clean chicken houses and check cattle, help
Mhm.
pull windmills, and build fence, and clean barns and that kind of thing.
When did you start doing those things? Were you really little?
Oh, yeah, we were pretty small. I suppose 6, 7 years old.
Uh-huh.
And of course, every chance we got, we'd slip off and go ride horses or something.
Okay. So that would be my next question. What did you do for fun when you were younger?
Yeah, we rode horses and just played like kids play.
Mm-hmm. How big was the ranch your parents had?
It was 5,000 acres.
And how many head of cattle did you run?
They run about 100.
Mm-hmm. And so were you always a rancher kind of when you were, did you
Yeah.
start, were you kind of born one or
Yeah,
started one when
kind
you
of
were
born
young?
that way.
Mm-hmm. And how about you, Helen? What did you do when you were little? What kind of chores did you do around the house?
We had cows to milk and chores to take care of, farm chores. I lived on about 120-acre farm,
Mm-hmm.
and my dad raised a lot of alfalfa hay along with moving houses, and I learned to drive a truck when I was about 6 or 7.
Oh, wow.
And literally, I'm talking a diesel truck, a big truck, not a pickup.
And what did you do for fun?
We had a big swimming hole. It wasn't plastered or cemented or anything, but it held the irrigation water for the crops.
Uh-huh.
And the whole community would gather there very often and swim on afternoons. And
Mm-hmm.
we had horses to ride and rodeos to go to.
Sounds good.
So,
Where did you go to school?
at Tularosa.
Mm-hmm. Could you tell me a bit about your school? Was it big? Was it small?
No. I think there were probably 60 in the whole class, and about 32, each room.
Mhm.
But it went all the way through from kindergarten to high school. Yeah.
And you graduated high school from there?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. How about you, Howard? Could you tell me where you went to school?
I went to school at Hayden the first year, and they closed the school.
How big was the school?
There, it wasn't very big. They had 8 grades, and there was probably a total of 15, maybe 20.
Mm-hmm.
in
So
the
how
whole-
far away was that from your parents' ranch?
It was about 15 miles.
And so the first year you went there, they closed the school.
Closed the school.
What did you do after that?
Well, my folks moved to Logan,
Uh-huh.
and we went to school there in the 2nd and 3rd and 4th grade.
And what was that school
Just
like?
your mother. Your dad didn't go.
No. It was pretty good sized school, I guess. I don't know how many kids they'd have, but 50 or 60 in the whole school probably.
Mm-hmm.
It was a pretty small school.
Mm-hmm. And where did you go to high school?
Went to high school in Tucumcari.
Okay.
The 5th grade on through the 12th, I went to high school.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't close that school. I was hoping they would, but they didn't. And then I went to New Mexico State in Las Cruces for 4 years,
And what did you study there?
animal science.
Animal science. Okay. And how about you? You finished high school, and did you
Mhm.
go to study more? Or?
I did. I went to junior college in Florida,
Oh, nice.
and then I became an EMT, and I've done a lot of credit hours, you know, for
Mhm.
in the medical field of it. So, and
Mhm.
I was an EMT for like 25 years.
Okay.
So
Do any of you remember so you went to, what year would you have graduated college?
1965.
Okay. Do either of you remember the drought of the 1950s from farming or ranching? Could you tell me any stories about it? Howard, do you remember?
All I can remember is it was pretty dry, and we had a lot of grasshoppers back in the early 50s, and there'd be just, you just walk out through the pasture, and it's just like the ground was moving. There were so many of them,
Mm-hmm.
and they ate everything in sight. Grass and weeds, everything. They just took everything over, and they had, the government came in with big planes and sprayed them, and I forgot how many acres they sprayed, but nearly everybody out here signed up for the program, and they sprayed thousands of acres and killed them. And the next year we didn't have quite so many, but it was pretty dry
Mm-hmm.
in the early 50s.
Do you remember how the drought impacted your family?
It just reduced the carrying capacity on the ground, and the cattle didn't weigh a lot.
Mm-hmm. Did they have to get rid of any cattle?
They sold as many as they thought they needed to,
Mm-hmm.
and that helped keep the rest of them. Of course, they had to buy feed for the rest of them in the wintertime.
Did they lose any of their land or anything over it? No. So they managed on. Growing up, did you guys hear any stories of the Dust Bowl from your grandparents?
Yeah, well, my dad said that they used to hang sheets, wet sheets, and hang them over the windows to keep the dust from coming in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And he said when the sun came up, the wind came up too, and they couldn't do much in the daytime. So after the wind went down, after sundown,
Huh.
then they'd go do their work.
Wow.
They'd pull windmills or whatever they had to do and
At night.
at night.
Wow, that's interesting. How about you, Helen?
one of my mother's siblings, the dust was so bad that she choked to death
Oh.
on it. I think she was probably like 5 years old. And, you know, they really suffered through it. In fact, the government came and shot my granddad's cows.
Did your granddad talk about that?
Sometimes, you know, he suffered a lot, and I think they left him one milk cow and like 3 or 4 other young cattle.
Mm-hmm.
But Mom talked that they would go harvest tumbleweeds,
Mm-hmm.
and they would put them in the barn and pack them down and put salt on them, and to make feed for the cows and stuff that was left.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the one dugout that they lived in, they didn't even have windows or anything, and it was just, a cloth or whatever over the tarp or whatever over the door.
Mm-hmm.
So it was hard on them.
It sounds very hard. Did you hear any stories from the women about the Dust Bowl? Because the women would have a different perspective too. Your grandmother?
My grandmother she didn't talk a lot about it. She was one of those look for tomorrow and let yesterday go,
Mm-hmm.
And with that many kids, I don't know if she had time to even stop and think about it or not,
Right.
because they raised and canned
Mm-hmm.
all of their food, so it was hard on them.
We just chewed the food a little better and swallowed the dust.
Howard, did you have any other stories that you heard when you were growing up about the Dust Bowl?
Not really. It lasted for quite a few years, and I don't remember exactly how many, but it was several years.
Uh-huh.
And my dad's folks, when they came here, they left Nevada, Missouri a day or two after Thanksgiving, and they didn't get here till sometime in December, and probably just before Christmas. And they said that the prairie was knee-deep in snow, is the words he used. And so I guess there wasn't too much dust then, but right after that there was.
Did any of your relatives leave? Did any of them move to California or go someplace else?
They didn't have the money to leave. They wanted to leave, but they said they didn't even have the money for a postage stamp.
So there's no way you could go to California then. How about you, Helen?
I think one of my grandmother's brothers loaded up some of the older kids of my mother's siblings, and they followed the harvest out to California.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't stay out there any length of time. I don't know, somewhere in Arizona, my mother was like less than 2 years old, and an Indian lady wanted to trade a basket of food for her.
Mm-hmm.
And she always laughed and said that her mother was really tempted. But they didn't.
Well, that's good. Do you guys have any other stories you remember about that?
My dad's folks came here in 2 wagons from Missouri. It took them 6 weeks to get here. One wagon was pulled with mules and the other one with oxen.
Wow.
And his older sister drove one wagon, and then her dad drove the other one. But it took them 6 weeks to get here.
Did they, I know some people who, they had those wagon outfitters and they'd have all the stuff on credit, and so then they'd owe all this money. Were they able to buy everything and then come here, or did they come in the whole, sort of?
I think they came with whatever they had, and they bought whatever they might need, but I don't think they owed anybody when they got here.
Mm-hmm.
It was during that Homestead Act
Mm-hmm.
that, and with that many kids, they were able to homestead a lot of different, quarter?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you could, when it first came out, I think it was a quarter section, then they increased it to a half section.
Mm-hmm.
And then later, I think you could homestead a whole section.
Helen, you mentioned your grandparents lived in a dugout.
Mm-hmm.
So was that dugout still around when you were growing up?
Oh, yes. In fact, my granddad used it for a feed storage, because it kept it cool and kept it dry down in there, and they later put in windows and a door that would lock, and he kept a bull snake in there all the time, so we kids didn't bother it very much. He said it kept down the mice and stuff, but we thought it was just to keep us out there.
I'll bet it worked.
It worked.
It worked really well. So if we go back to when you guys were kids, Where did you do all your kind of shopping and things? Would you do that in Amistad? Would you do that in Clayton?
They'd go to Clayton once in a great while, but most of it was done at Hayden. They had
In
a store
Hayden.
then, and they had one at Rosebud, and they'd shop at both places, I suppose, and
Okay.
then once in a while they'd go on into Clayton.
What
But
was
I think it was a 2-day trip to go to Clayton.
wow? And what was Clayton like when you were growing up?
I was so small, I don't remember a whole lot about it, but it wasn't much there as I remember.
Is it different now than it was then?
Yeah, it's a lot different now.
How's it different?
Oh, everybody's driving a car now instead of riding a horse.
That's a big difference.
Yeah.
How about you, Helen? Where did your family do all their kind of shopping and?
Well, they lived on the outskirts of Tularosa, and so it wasn't a big deal to go to the store. But my granddad had cream, and he would haul it in from the ranch and put it on the rail there at Clayton.
Okay.
I don't know if he came once a week or how often he went into town.
And now, were you ever in Clayton when you were little, visiting him?
Well, yeah, we were there quite a bit. He had a Model A. I remember that. And he enjoyed a beer when he went to town on whatever day it was. And one of his brothers went with him, and they had it, they called it eared back. They'd pull down one side for the brake and the other side for the gas. And my great uncle said, "Sam, I think you got it eared back because you got a cop's car." That was after their little Saturday afternoon beer, I think. But I remember stories like that, but I don't remember. I remember riding in it one or two times, but that was all.
Do you remember what Clayton was like?
No,
No.
I don't.
Okay. So in your communities, how did you communicate? Did you have a telephone growing up, Howard?
Some of the neighbors had a telephone on the wire fence, and of course it was.
When was that?
That was in the 30s and early 40s. But it wasn't very successful. I'm sure there was a lot of static on it. And
Sure.
A lot of eavesdropping on it and everything else.
And how about you, Helen?
Oh, we always had phones.
You always had phones.
Your folks didn't get a phone, though. I mean, we haven't had a phone that long. We didn't have a phone here when we married.
And when did you get married?
We got married in 74.
And so you still didn't have a phone?
We didn't get a phone till what, 84, 85. We had a bag phone,
What's a bag phone?
like a cell phone, but
Okay.
it was only in a bag.
Okay.
And it was hooked up to a battery, a car battery, that
Okay.
sat in the living room.
Wow.
And they went off duty at 10 o'clock at night, and they came back on it.
So
6
what
in the
happened
morning.
if you had an emergency?
Hit the road, Jack.
So how did you guys communicate before you had a phone? So if something was going on in the community, but if something happened and you needed to tell someone, if someone got hurt, for instance, or needed to go to Amarillo or something like that, how did you communicate?
You just take them to Amarillo, and later you'd tell them what happened.
That's
Pretty
it.
much.
That's simple. What are some of the sorts of community events you remember?
Oh, they used to play cards a lot and at community centers, the old schoolhouses and stuff.
In Rosebud?
In Rosebud and Hayden, and they'd have little get-togethers and have a little watermelon feed or something like that. And kids would play baseball or something like that. Then later they got to doing square dancing and
Where would they have square dancing?
in the gyms.
Nice. What do you remember, Helen?
Pretty much, I I think how many years has the New Year's dance been going on at Amistad? I mean,
Long time.
yeah, 70 years or so. And they would come in they'd come and spend the nights in their vehicles or in the back
Wow.
of them, whatever, because, if they danced. And that was their main get-together other than church. And did they even have church every Sunday then?
How many people would go to that New Year's Eve party?
Everybody that could possibly get there from, what, 100-mile radius?
So how many people would that be? Like 100 people, 50
No,
people?
Or more.
More.
Yeah.
And everybody just slept in the parking lot.
The gym would be pretty well packed with them. And I think that's where I learned to dance when I was about 5.
Oh.
So.
And did you guys have food there?
Oh, yeah. There was always a concession stand, and everybody brought covered dishes and laid it all out, and everybody enjoyed it,
And did the kids came and the adults? It was everyone.
Everybody,
So
sure.
what did the kids do while the adults were
Well,
dancing?
the little ones danced. but
Everyone danced.
The babies, they usually opened up what used to be the library over there, and one or two of the teenage girls would babysit or...
Okay. That's nice. So you remember that when you were 5?
Yeah, we came here about every time, that and the Labor Day rodeo at Hayden.
So I mean, and it was a 100-mile radius. So people from
Yeah.
Clayton would come, and all over the place would
Logan,
come.
Tucumcari.
Now, did you remember going when you were a little kid?
We didn't go that much to the dances back then. It was too far, and my folks wouldn't let us drive that far.
Did you go when you were older?
Yeah, we did.
So what did you guys do when you were in high school? What did you do for fun?
Oh, we played different sports, and that was about it, I guess.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Helen?
I played the violin, and we had a lot of concerts and a lot of practices, and we had summer programs where we could, go swimming once a week or whatever to the public pool, and actually we just made our own fun. All the kids would get together and play games, hide and seek, and Piggy wants a signal, and just, a lot of them that when the families would get together, I mean, there were a lot of kids. I mean, probably 15 or 20 kids running around. So there was always something to do. We took a lot of nigger shooters and shot birds and snakes and stuff like that with them. So
Always
we made our own fun.
Made your own fun. Now, when did you meet your husband?
In 73,
So how old were you then?
25, 24, something like that. And he had ordered a load of hay, and I worked for the guy that delivered hay, and I brought him a load of hay. And I had 2 men that were with me that were supposed to unload it, and they had gone partying the night before, and they both got sick. And so I got up there and threw the hay off every bale of it, and he stacked it in the barn then. Took a while.
Mm-hmm. So what were you doing loading hay or moving hay? Because you studied to be an EMT.
This was later. The
Okay.
EMT came in later.
Later.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you met Howard. So was it love at first sight?
Probably.
Probably.
And how long did you guys date before you got married? Was it fast?
No, we didn't get married till June of 74, and this was in September, October of 73. So we only had one date.
You only had one date?
It lasted a long time.
So what did people do? What did you do for a date
Well,
around here?
we visited, or we'd meet in town for coffee or something like that, because he lived out here and I lived in Clayton, and I don't know, we just didn't go anywhere, you know, we were, I guess, satisfied to just visit.
Sounds good.
So,
So after you went to college, you came back and did you start your own ranch or farming
I
or?
worked for an uncle for 3 years and helped him, and then he decided he wanted to downsize, and he rented me part of his ranch.
Mhm.
And now I'm so poor I can't move.
Just like the Dust Bowl.
Yeah.
So how did you always ranch here, or did you also do hay or anything else?
No, we're just ranching.
Mm-hmm.
We figured it was too dry and dusty to do any farming, raise any hay or anything. We figured we'd be better off just to buy it, and then we would have some.
Mm-hmm.
and what did you do to make money on this? It wasn't just ranching.
So did you have a day job or a night job or another job?
24-hour day job. We were truck drivers.
Truck drivers. So
That
where
was
did,
after we got married.
yeah. So you started the ranch and then you got married.
Mm-hmm.
So when you first started, how many cattle did you start with?
Oh, when I first started, I think the first group that I bought was about 20, and then I bought quite a few more after that.
And how many acres did you have?
When we first started, we didn't have too many. We had about 5,000,
How many acres do you have now?
about 12,000.
Okay, so you expanded. So then you had but to support yourself, so you had a hard time making a living off of ranching? Is it because of drought, or what was so difficult to
Calf
afford?
prices. One year we sold our calf crop for 15 cents a pound.
What year was that?
That was in 75.
Wow.
The market had gotten so high in 73, and when it crashed, it went to the bottom.
So you almost lost everything then?
Well, we just, tightened our belt and went to trucking more, hauling cattle, and then we started hauling ice for the dry ice plant.
Okay.
And we had 2 trucks. He went one way and I went another. And
So were they day trips, sort of truck driving, or were they long hauls?
They were
Long
long
hauls.
hauls.
So was someone always home kind of working on the ranch and someone was gone, or how did you make it work? You guys had passed each other in the road
Pretty
and
much.
waved.
notes on the refrigerator. And
So what's the farthest you would go, Helen?
oh gosh, I went to Phoenix. I went to Los Angeles. I'd go up into Montana,
Wow.
down into Texas, and over into Kansas. I
Drive.
hauled a lot to Kansas City.
Wow. And how about you, Howard?
We took a load of ice every day to Dallas,
Every day.
every day.
How long of a drive is that?
Too long.
It's about 500 miles down there. 500
Every day you come back.
Yes, down and back. 1,000 miles a day.
Jeez.
Of course, it cost me a heart attack too.
She took 4 trips back to back down there. You get about 4 hours sleep if everything worked good.
Wow. When was that?
But I would meet her in Amarillo.
And 10,000 and 2 and 3.
Wow.
20,000
Yeah.
and 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
A lot of times, if he didn't have a load going, he would pick up my load out here by Rosebud and meet me in Amarillo. And I would make it to Amarillo a little bit before he got there, and I would be able to sleep an hour or 2. And then he'd bring him, we'd swap trailers, and I would turn around and go back.
Okay. And do you two have children?
4.
So how did you do that? That sounds impossible.
Well, I think the whole community helped with those
Yeah.
kids. Really and truly.
Yeah.
And they were good kids. I have no,
We'd stake them out, put 2 over.
no,
across.
don't believe it.
Wow. So did you always do the ice and then you did other jobs, or was that like did you work for different companies, or you just worked for yourself?
No, we weren't ever leased to anybody. We had our own authority and our own trucks, and bought trailers. And sometimes when it would get so busy, we would hire other trucks to help us. And so, along with everything else, he was doing the dispatching. By then he had a cell phone, and I think at one time we had like 18 or 19 trucks running,
Wow.
helping us, and he was dispatching over the phone
Wow.
while he
So-
was still driving.
And you were making the main decisions for the ranch, or did you have someone that was managing it for you?
No,
Us.
we'd make them.
So how many days a week would you say you were driving a truck?
10,
No.
pretty much.
How did you have any time for the cattle?
It was pretty hard sometimes.
He would fix windmills at night, and
Wow.
if we had a breakdown, we would book off a couple of loads so we could get the branding done.
Yeah.
And by then, you know, the kids were kind of getting up where they could check cattle and stuff besides
Yeah.
go to school. And
So the kids helped you a lot.
oh yeah, my goodness, they still help us a lot.
Mhm.
They really do.
Were there seasons where you knew you'd be busy, so you didn't drive your truck because you had to deal with the cattle, or vice versa? When you know the cattle are kind of taking care of themselves, you could drive your trucks more.
Well, there's only so many hours of daylight, so you work
Yeah.
on the ranch during then, and then you truck at night. See, there was no taking off much of any time.
It sounds like it.
We slept here and there and across the steering wheel and in the sleeper, and
Uh-huh.
we had good trucks, we had good equipment,
Mm-hmm.
and we did it. We just did it.
Helen, can I ask you what it was like being a female trucker during that time?
When I first started, it was terrible. That was back in the days when you pulled into a truck stop, and the attendant would come out and fuel your truck and wash your windshields and stuff. Not me.
So what year was that you started?
73.
Okay.
And I was ignored. There was no place. I'd have to rent a motel room to take a shower, change clothes, clean
Wow.
up, because the showers in the truck stops were for men only. And it took about probably 7 or 8 years before women began to, you know, decide that was not such a bad way to make a living, and started joining the troops. And but at first it was really hard.
What do you think inspired you to start driving a truck? Was it your
I was
father?
born with it.
Yeah.
I think when I was 12, we were 400 miles from home, and one of the drivers got mad, got sick, something left, and Daddy set 2 4x4 blocks in the truck seat and told me to take that diesel home. And I did. I pretty well by then knew the gears and stuff,
Yeah.
so,
Wow.
you know, he just said, be careful, don't get a ticket, you know,
Uh-huh.
because that would hang him.
Uh-huh.
But it was, I grew up with him.
Yeah. And Howard, what made you decide to be a trucker? Was it her experience with them, or just something different?
Well, I had trucks before, and I had an uncle that drove trucks, and I thought that I needed one to move more cattle than a little pickup trailer would haul. So I bought an old truck, and pretty soon it wasn't big enough, so I bought another one. And first one thing, then another, and
Uh-huh.
I just thought that I had to move them quicker, and instead of taking all day with one pickup and a little trailer.
Uh-huh.
And then different people would want you to haul cattle for them, and then I'd get caught hauling illegal, and I had to get legal, so.
And then you were in business. So were you trucking before he was? Or did you guys kind of start at the same time?
Oh, no.
It were-
That's how I met him, was driving a...
Right, yeah.
I was hauling hay.
Right. But you were
To the
just, were you
ranchers.
doing that permanently at that point? That was your...
Yeah, that
okay.
was my income. I worked for a relative that lived in Clayton, and he had 3 trucks, and I was one of the drivers. And we'd go to Colorado and load, and then bring them into Clayton, and then the next day we'd deliver them out to the different ranches.
So Helen, you talked about how difficult it was being a female trucker when you first got started. So what did you like about it, or why did you continue to do it?
I was an oddity. I had fun.
Yeah.
You know, really. A lot of the drivers were really, distant and all, but some of them, after we got CB radios and we could talk going up and down the road, I was an oddity, so I always had a lot of people to visit with on the radio and stay awake and make lots of miles.
That's good. So switching gears a little bit, could we talk about the community and what makes this community special? Because you said, well, you guys were trucking, the community helped raise your children. So could you tell me a bit about that?
We'd leave them here by themselves, and somebody had to look after them.
Uh-huh.
And somebody'd come by and make sure they were still around.
His mother kept him a lot. She really did. And either here or if it was in the summer over at their house. And the neighbors were always stopping in to check on them, whether we were here or whether they weren't. So our neighbor down here was Kelly Hirschbarker. And he'd stop and get those kids either in trouble or out of trouble, whichever his mood was. He stopped one day. I'd come out of the house and grabbed a belt and was fixing to clean the house with the kids, and he went flying by and he stopped and he backed up and he came over there and he just went to visiting, and I thought, what does he want, And I was thinking, don't you need to be somewhere? Anyway, we kept visiting, and after about 15, 20 minutes, he looked at the kids and he says, I think she's cooled off from her temper tantrum. And if I was you kids, I would get real scarce for the rest of the afternoon and leave her be, because I'm late for an appointment. I should have been there. But that's the kind of neighbors they were. They were always doing that, weren't they?
What else makes the community special?
It's family. If anybody needs anything, we're there for them, and they're there for us. Just, it doesn't matter whether someone's sick, they bring food. If they need their house cleaned, I need to let everybody know about it. But anyway, it's just one huge family.
That's nice. Howard, do you have anything to add to that?
I can't think of anything right at the moment.
Okay. So the next question is about ranching. So how has ranching changed in you from your parents' lifetime to your lifetime?
Well, the market's got a little better. And this year we've had a lot of rain, and grass is good, and so everything's good. We'll be able to pay the bank this year.
That's good. Helen, what do you think? How has it changed?
Well, the equipment we have, we used to pull windmills by hand, hand over hand. The kids and Howard would pull them, or we would hook up a snatch block and tackle at the top of the well and use a pickup, and now we have a well truck. You just back up there and, work on it. So the equipment and everything saves so much more time and more efficient. And we sold an awful lot of our cattle during this last drought because it was just too dry. And we're kind of in the trying to get some built back up, without just, it's kind of hard to pay $2,000 for a cow right now,
Yeah.
But in comparison with prices, the cattle market's finally coming up to meet the cost of living, and it wasn't for so many years. There was no way you could just make it,
Did you guys ever think in that time, when you were struggling and you took those extra jobs to make it on the ranch, did you ever think of getting rid of the ranch or getting rid of the cattle? No. So why? What made you hang on? What is it?
We figured someday it'd work out where you'd have good rains and good weights on the cattle, and you'd
How about you, Helen? You shook your head emphatically, so. What do you think it is that made you want to just hang in?
I think it becomes part of you. You don't even think about living, leaving to, I don't know where you could go from here that would be any better. You might make more money. You might, have more access to shopping and stuff like that. But what you would lose in trading it, and you listen to the TV and the news, we don't have any of that. The keys are in our vehicles. We don't ever lock a door. And you go into cities and stuff, and oh my word, they got bars on the windows and guard dogs and everything else, and we're spoiled. I offered to move to Clayton when my kids were going into high school because of sports and everything. And they said, "No, Mom, we want to come home." And we still let them do sports, but it wasn't every day like it was when they went to school out here at Amistad. At then, 6th grade was as far as the school went.
So was it a big adjustment for them when they had to go to Clayton?
Oh yes, very. The first day in junior high, my oldest daughter saw a girl get knifed and killed in the bathroom, the girls' bathroom, and she didn't want to ever go back. And I couldn't blame her, but
And that was in Clayton?
yes.
What year was that? Maybe the 80s or?
Let's see, she was born in 68, and that would be 78, probably 79.
Wow.
So, huge adjustment, oh yes. But our bus driver out here was, the smaller buses would meet the big bus, and they would all get on the big bus. And those kids band together. They made their own family. A lot of them did homework on the way to and from school. And when they got to school, they still looked out for each other and took up for each other. And those kids in towns, they didn't have any idea what they were getting up against when they went to tackling these country kids, because they just mopped the floor with you, and then the parents had to go to town. Well, if you're going to walk on me, you're going to fight for it, you know. And that was a lot different than what the town kids had.
And at least they had that family in our schools.
So.
Is there any other ways you'd say ranching's changed? What about in this county? Is it the size of the ranches or anything else?
They're all about the same as they have been. And I think just more modern equipment and later technology on different ways to do things has probably helped ranching as much as anything.
When you factor in time and money, do you think ranching's easier now than it used to be?
I think it is.
How about you, Helen?
Yeah, I think it is. I think there's one of the things that I see that is very heartbreaking is so many of the older people live so much longer. And so their kids, in order to make a living, left here. And there was so much land that left dormant because there was no one to, and the kids, some of them would want to sell and some of them wouldn't, but no one was willing to give up their lifestyle to move back to the country. They'd gotten used to, all the things that were so familiar to them.
Sure.
And it's been hard to hang on to it. The ranches that sell are you'd like to increase your land amount, but it's so expensive that, you can't go out here and buy 2,000 or 3,000 acres. It's like 10,000 or so. And you just, if you can't see how you can pay for it, it's not wise to buy it.
Sure. So what do you think the future of ranching looks like then? in this county?
For us, it looks good because our kids are very interested and we will leave them a legacy.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
As for other places, what do you think?
No, I think that's probably right.
But what about these other people that either they don't have any kids or they'll just sell off?
I'll sell it. So do you think there'll be some bigger ranches and then people like you will still have your legacy?
I hate to think that a lot of South Texas people that have oil money, they come out here, they buy up some of these ranches.
Mm-hmm.
They run yearlings on them. They don't run them year round. It doesn't help the community. It doesn't help the land.
Mm-hmm.
They overgraze it, and they don't pay the taxes or anything.
Yeah.
Because they haul what they need in here in a truck or a trailer, and they bring in their hired people to work
Mm-hmm.
2 or 3 months and they're not community,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't involve themselves because they're here such a short time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the ranches will get bigger as time goes on, and the small ones will gradually go away,
Mm-hmm.
and the bigger ones will get bigger.
So when you guys drive around, because it sounds like you drive around a lot, or you used to, and I'm sure you still do, have you noticed any kind of sort of environmental changes or changes in the natural landscape? So changes in vegetation or changes in water, like places where there used to be water but wasn't, or changes in animals, like there's more animals or there's less animals? Any of those kinds of changes that you notice around here?
I don't see that much change.
How about you, Helen? Have you noticed anything?
Well, I think a lot of the land has been so overgrazed that we've got a invasion of loco weed, and it's a terrible thing that the ranchers, the younger ranchers that have come back or that have the land, they're paying for what their ancestors did by overgrazing, and they've got the devil. They don't know what to do with him, you know. It wouldn't be productive to try to spray it. They'd kill too much other stuff, so I see differences in the land. It's just been the last 3 years that we've actually had water, rain, and before that, for 15 years, it was dry every year.
Do you think the weather's changed in your lifetime? Like it's gotten consistently drier or anything like that, or it's just so variable?
It varies a lot, but it does seem to get drier and then it'll get wet. And, but it seems like to me it gets pretty hot in the summertime.
How about you, Helen?
I think there's a global warming. We don't seem to have the snowstorms like we did like 30 years ago. I mean, every winter we were snowed in for weeks at a time. And it's been 2 or 3 years since we've even had a really bad snow. We've had snow, but not one that's just puts you in the house and you have to stay there, you know. So, yeah, I think our weather's slowly changing.
Okay. So, my next question is, what advice do you have for the next generation of ranchers?
Run. Well, yes.
How about you, Howard? Could you explain that, Helen?
Yeah, I could. Are you sure you're not out of tape?
No.
It's a really hard life. It's very rewarding. The children of today that like to sit and watch TV or play video games will not make it. You have to be self-driven. You have to be willing to go the extra 5 miles, not 1 mile, but 5.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing things for yourself. If it doesn't end at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and if a heifer's in trouble at 3 in the morning, that's where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see this generation that's coming on is going to take that responsibility. Our kids were brought up with it, and they watch more cartoons now than they ever did when they were kids because they're all new to them. But I don't see the younger generations. We've got one set of grandson and granddaughter that, they eat, sleep, and drink those horses.
Mm-hmm.
And the 10-year-old went out here. This is like a 1,500-acre pasture here, and she gathered the cattle by herself.
Wow.
And just, this, they will make it.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones that sit there or are on the video games all day, they won't.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't have the stamina.
Right. Howard, do you have any advice for the next generation of ranchers?
No, unless you can find somebody that's got a lot of money to sell to them. Pay the IRS and live happy ever after.
Is there anything any lessons you guys think you learned from all the droughts that you experienced in the past, or that your parents experienced, that you learned that you use in this last drought that was very bad? Are there things that you learned over the years?
Just not overgraze, or, be prepared to roll with it. There's nothing you can do, but if you overgraze that land, we're going to be back in the Dust Bowl.
So,
and if you don't take care of it, it's not going to take care of you.
Yeah. How do you roll with it and not lose your shirt?
Tighten your belt and do without a lot of things. That's one of these younger generations. They want everything right now.
So could you remember or give examples of the things you've done without, so you could keep your ranch in the tough years?
We didn't go anywhere. We went to town once a month and bought groceries, and went in the end of the summer and bought school clothes, and that was it. Mm-hmm. My kids didn't go to Amarillo until they were out of high school. It was hard.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't look at it that way. I mean, it seemed like everybody was in the same boat.
Right.
I know her daughter passed on track shoes to my oldest daughter. One of them, they swapped formals one year so that they'd be different. Mm-hmm. Just family and community.
Mm-hmm. Howard, do you have anything to add to that?
I can't think of anything.
This is supposed to be your interview. Here I've done the whole thing.
Do either of you have any other stories you want to tell me? We have 5 minutes of tape left. Is there any stories you want to tell? Your children, your grandchildren, any stories you want people to remember about your family?
I can't think of anything.
How about you,
Gosh,
Helen?
I don't know. Everything comes to mind and nothing, know. I really don't know. I can't imagine living anywhere else, just other than being here. And our church is a very important part. I think it's helped hold the community together. After the school closed, it became the focal point, where before we had school functions to go to, but that's about the only thing I can think of.
And were your kids involved in the summer school at the church?
Oh, yeah. Bible school? Sure.
And do you have grandchildren now?
I do. 2 of them are grown.
Did they go to the school?
Yes, and the girl helps. Connie helps with the Bible school. She's a volunteer. She's out of high school now. She's in got her first year of college behind her. But
Mhm.
we have one that's 8 and one that's 10. The girl would probably enjoy Bible school. I don't think you could corral that boy long enough
To get to the Bible
to get him
school.
into Bible school. He has his own itinerary that's just him.
Mm-hmm. So you guys moved the little house on the prairie. So do you want to tell us what makes that house so special, and what does it mean to have that house there?
Well, it was a mail order house from Sears and Roebuck, and they come out there and put it together by numbers.
Montgomery Ward.
Montgomery Ward.
Montgomery Ward.
Mhm.
And it's amazing how well the wood has lasted all these years and not have any rot to
Yeah.
speak of in it. And it's a pretty heavy little house for no bigger than it is.
Mm-hmm.
But it's pretty well built too.
Mhm. Helen, do you have any?
He didn't take it down the highway. We took down fences and he went out across the pasture with it over to the church. So we didn't have a police escort. It was
Wow.
one of those stop the traffic and get across the highway. And
And drive through the field.
yes.
Well, we shut the engines off on the trucks and listened, and we didn't hear anybody coming down the road, and we couldn't see anybody. So we had the fences down, and then we just went across. We got, one guy went up on top of the roof of the house, and I told him, I said, we don't want to have any mistakes like hitting that power line,
Sure.
because that'll be your last mistake.
I would imagine.
They said it would clear, so we pulled it
And it
across.
did.
And we just eased along till we got there. And it was about dark when we got there with it.
And then we found out the foundation was too big for the house.
Oh.
They had dug a basement and we had to roll it out over this basement. And when we got there, we had about this much space all the way around the house that it would have just fallen clear to the bottom of the basement. And the guy that did the foundation, he was very upset. And we told him that, look, you're the one that came out here and
Measured it.
You didn't go by our measurements, so you just fix it, And so it sat on the truck and beams for quite a while, a month or 2 or 3, before it was able to be set down.
And why is it so important to keep all the history that you have in that house? What does that mean to the community?
Well, people that are younger, they have no idea what kind of hardships their older people went through and what kind of buildings they lived in. And it's nice for them to get to see that kind of stuff. And all the little details in the house make it kind of neat to see, and takes a lot of time to do those little things and build one.
Do you know how many children they had?
3.
3? I know there's 1 bedroom downstairs, and I have not been upstairs. Is there 1 or 2?
2.
2 bedrooms?
It's still a small
Yes.
house.
Each room is like the bed and
Yeah.
walkway,
Yeah.
and that's it. But
Yeah. It's very
Well, you
special
don't have
place.
as much to clean that away.
that's not all bad either.
Yeah.
Really?
The smaller it's not big.
Yeah. Yep.
But
Well-
having this room is fun because when everybody gets together,
Yeah. the
we
space.
had
We're gonna.
a Cowboys for Christ meeting, and we fed 65 here for supper one evening.
That's very.
So that's
They
our
were all
It's a good
community.
space.
All in the same room.
Yeah,
I
all
love
in
the
here
way
and
this
sit.
big room
Yeah,
is.
you could fit a lot of people.
So-
And then when y'all get together for Christmas and
Oh,
Thanksgiving,
yeah.
everybody can
Everyone
be in
can
the
fit.
same.
Well, I thank you for your time. We're running out of the tape, so I appreciate talking to you today. So thanks.